Apple and Citibank and Estee Lauder, Salomon Brothers, Charles Schwab, Wells Fargo, you name it. He's a fifth-degree black belt and had a karate school on Times Square when he was 25 years old. And he's built more than 78 training courses, including the Ultimate Business Mastery System with me, which came about because there is nobody more persistent. There's nobody that makes a plan and follows through more consistently than my dear friend Chet. I mean, this is a guy that for 17 years came at me, and I was interested in doing business with him. But, my dance card was full. I was, my schedule was so full it just wasn't the right time. And finally, he hit me at the right time, and we decided to partner about 3 years ago. And we've been turning around companies all around the world. In fact, I'm here in Fiji right now because we have one of our business mastery programs where we have 9 of them this year. They're kind of a boot camp for businesses, and they're sold out for the entire year. And so at this point, I've been looking at how can I reach people and how can we continue to empower people since the program's full until next January. And one of the ways that we thought we could do that is he and I sat down and we were going to be teaching together this week and saying, what do we do to take things to a whole other level? What's the best insights that we have? Let's hone this down even more. And in doing that, one thing came up for both of us throughout our history and working with people is that we have so many strategies and so many tools for implementation that very often people come out, we offer people $1 million guarantee at Business Mastery that says if you don't have $1 million in value in the first day in either additional growth or in savings, then you get the day for free and you pay nothing. And that's part of why the thing sells out. Everybody and their brother wants to come. And we have giant companies, billion-dollar companies like HomeX that we've grown them $700 million by their estimates in the last few years. It's a New York Stock Exchange company, the largest home builder down in Mexico. And we've got chiropractors who've got an army of 2 and they've doubled their business, themselves and the one person that works for them or 3 people that work for them. So it's been an exciting time. But the one thing we both agreed on was that, we're in a situation here where most people implement about maybe 10% of what you teach them. And, they don't have to really do more than 10% to see giant growth in their business or sales, but he and I get frustrated because we see so many other things that you could do with a business, so many ways that you can grow it. So we finally figured out what's really missing is you're teaching all these principles, but people are missing individual plans. And we thought, how can we do that? How can we get people to put plans together? And so today, what we're going to do is walk you through how to create the kind of plan that will get you the growth that you really want in your business. Because if you think about it, you can look at people all day long that know what to do, but they're not doing what they know. And one of the reasons they don't do it is because they get overwhelmed. I'm sure in your business there's so many things to do and there's so many people pulling on you that unless you have a really clear step-by-step plan, you're going to find yourself getting distracted. You're going to be pulled by all the interrupted communications or by challenges. But if you got that plan, you can make it happen. And so in the end, we originally were going to do this format where we're going to take some people and bring them online and work with them up front, which is what we've done in our last 2 or 3 formats. But we're going to change it this time and actually just walk you through the structure of how you can leave here today and put together the plan that will grow your business, double your sales, expand and increase your profitability. And Chet's going to be doing that himself. And one of the reasons is I'll chime in every now and then is Chet, some of you may know in the last year he was diagnosed with leukemia. And he went through some unbelievably tough spots, to say the least. And during that time, I got to tell you, the man has true grit because there are times, if you saw pictures of what Chet's body was like going through these treatments, many of you know what it's like when you have chemotherapy going through your body, and it's just, you have to go through bone marrow transplants. And this guy has been just a stud. He's been somebody that has never lost his focus and has been tough as nails, and he's been through the process. And he's now a couple months beyond that transfer, and he's doing very well. And he's supposed to be here in Fiji, and the last day he'll share with you, 2 days ago, a day and a half ago, he was pulled back into the hospital. He's not having a problem with the cancer, the leukemia, but they took him off some of the immune suppression drugs early, and so it whacked havoc on his body. And I said to him, let me just do this thing. And he's literally in the hospital. And he said, Tony, I'm so passionate about this. He said, I really want to do this. So when you're hearing him, if his voice sounds a little faltering or something like that, he's taking no pain medications, and he really wants to do this. So he's an extraordinary soul, and before I bring him on here, just be aware that's how dedicated he really is. There's no reason for him to have to do this today, but he just wants to reach out and help. This is what Chet's life is really all about. And so with 12, I guess now 13,000 of you listening, just to let you know what we're going to do is at the end of this conversation where he'll be walking you through the plan, what we're going to do is we'll take a few of you and we will interact with you. But what happened last time was we ended up with one person's business. It was really complex, and we spent all the time on one person's business with 12, 13, 14,000 people listening. We really want to make sure that we get to hopefully maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So we're going to ask if you'll write down your question, make it real specific if you would about one aspect of your business rather than your whole business. Then we'll try and make as much progress and interact with you here at the end on that as well. So that's what we'll do at the end here. And just know this is really about strengthening and building your company. This is about you becoming a business owner, not a business operator. Before I bring Chet on, I just want to plant that seed with you. Most business people are really business operators. And because business operators are always stressed. Business operators have no time. Business operators are usually overwhelmed. Business operators, frankly, usually are broke. And when you're constantly operating your business without a strategy, without a plan, without a system, without something to manage it, you live in reaction. And all I can tell you is anticipation is power. Reaction will always bite you. If you have to react, you're going to find yourself in trouble in your business. So we want to strengthen it, create that plan. And the guy that's going to help us to do it is Chet Holmes. And let's bring him on. Chet, warm welcome to you, brother. How you doing?
Thank you, man. Thank you. Good. That strengthening thing is probably worth a comment because we have, you and I now have 12 different entities that offer business training programs of every kind, from search engine optimization to website services to, teaching people how to take their companies virtual to, just everywhere that there was a need in the marketplace, we feel, to having what I am proud to say, and I say this from having seen everything. I'm one of those guys like you, Tony. I buy everything. Me and Nightingale Conant were one at one point. I just literally bought everything those guys had to sell. I've studied everybody. I've bought every training program. And when Tony and I got together to do a training program, we said, Tony said, if it's not the best training program on the market, I don't want to do it. So I believe we ended up with that. It's a phenomenal training program with Tony does 8 life-changing seminars. I do 12, and there's 15 other experts that we do. But that whole thing about strengthening the business is just the key, because I got sick and I was out of action now for a year. And basically, those 12 companies that I run each one has a head of the company, and then there's a head that they all report to. And so unfortunately, all that was set up really well in advance. Most of those I've had for years and years and years. And so they're very, very well structured. And so when I got sick, the newer ones, the brand new ones, took a little bit of a dip, and I'll explain why. But the ones that were really well set up, they went fine. So my wish for all of you is that you could take a year off and have your businesses stay strong. And some of them went up, and closing ratios improved, and a lot of areas in the companies just kept improving and improving and improving, even with me essentially doing 2 hours a week. I went from doing 70 hours a week to 2 hours a week over the last year, in many weeks where, of course, I was worthless and couldn't do anything. But the point is that my goal for you is that your business would run that well, it would be that strong. But, of course, don't take that year off to do leukemia. Take that year off to go to the Caribbean, or go spend a year in Tony's resort in Fiji. But
I'll tell you, I want to mention, Chet, I didn't mention earlier, but, what really made that work, everybody, were these plans, these written plans. And there have been studies that have done. One study was done a couple of years ago where they just took 2 groups of people, one that had written business plans that they were following through on how to grow their business, not just business plans, but growth plans, and one where they didn't. And literally 50%, they achieved 50% more over the next 2 years. Another study was done with Del Monte, I believe it was. It was 2 different divisions of Del Monte, and one, they just did training, which by training alone, they increased performance over a 6-month period by 20%. But an identical location, different division of Del Monte, they did training where they had professional coaches who facilitated these people, but also held them accountable. They didn't just train them, they were measuring them every day. And they saw a 400% increase in performance over that same group. So Chet and I have just started doing studies because we want to make sure that people really make this happen. And we've got 300 people that we're now studying. We're going to max it out at 1,000, and then the study will begin in full. But this is what really a business coach is designed to do, and that's what's made Chet so extraordinary. he doesn't just train people. He really does, in all of our companies as well, manage, lead, coach, and hold them to the fire. But what made it keep going, again, my point is having those plans even when he was out of action.
And, I'm going to give Tony some credit, but, it's funny. Sometimes you're in it, you don't recognize it, but when you're outside of it, you see it clearly. Like, Tony invented business coaching. When I was coming up, in success in New York City, and in fact, that's the first time I ever saw you, Tony. You did a firewalk for 600 people. That was when you were with small crowds. Is in Manhattan.
25 years old, yeah.
Yeah. And, you invented the whole concept of business coaching. At the time, the only coaches were for, sports teams and things like that. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about why is coaching important, and, how does that make a difference? And, you invented the concept, so.
Well, I don't know if I invented it. I borrowed it, as you said, from sports. At that time, I can remember clearly being on Larry King back in the early 80s. I remember it was one of the first times I was on Larry King, and Larry says to me, I just worked with President Clinton, and he was saying, so you're a coach. What the heck is a coach? How can you be a coach to the president, right? And it was right around the time when because I wasn't a motivator. A motivator is somebody just rah-rah, pump you up, no strategy. My whole life, I looked at things and said, I'm not a motivator, I'm not a guru. What am I? And I thought, the people that have touched me most have been coaches. There were people that were, sometimes I was a better athlete than they were. But because I was in the game, I couldn't see the forest from the trees. They could see it, they could measure it, they could give me the insight, they cared about me. They weren't better than me. They were just right there beside me, helping me to get the results and help me tweak a few things that made giant growth. And so I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm a coach. So after doing this for years, I get on Larry King, and I can remember I was so exasperated because he was almost like saying it's a ridiculous term, like, that's really for sports. And maybe 2 years after that, everybody was a coach. Literally.
Yeah.
Where suddenly psychiatrists were coaches, financial planners are coaches today. Everybody calls them a coach. But I think it's an accurate term if you're really working with someone to guide them, not because you're better than them, but because you've got insight, because it's your full-time focus. I remember Michael Jordan quitting because he said, my coach is done, I'm done, right? Literally, he's moving on, I'm moving on. This is the end of it. Every great athlete and every great businessman I've ever known has coaches. And today you and I both coach each other, and we also have people that we respect that we've reached out to over the years that have coached us on specific issues because somebody's got a mastery of it. And this is what both of us, and you, Chet, I have to acknowledge, I've seen Chet turn around companies. I've been on conference calls with Chet, and companies come up and they're doing really well. And Chet will come up with 7 ways to double the business. And I'll listen to the CEO who is, in the very beginning of this thing, they're quite skeptical or thinking, how can we do any better, and just turn them around. So coaching, we really believe, makes the difference, but really the coaching with the plan, so the two together are what makes it happen. And we're going to talk about some of those principles of the plan now.
All right, so let's get a rough plan. If you guys are taking notes, there's 4 components to any really great plan. I'd like you to write these down. First of all, number 1 is your strategy or your strategic position. And then number 2 is skill development as part of any really growth and strengthening plan. And I'm going to say that growth and strengthening, because it's not just about growth, it's also about strengthening. And then your profit drivers, what are the ways you're going to drive up profits? Because like Tony says, most companies are operators, they're broke. You get into the business because maybe you're a great chef, so you open a restaurant, and you don't know how to grow that business. You don't know how to market, you don't know how to sell, you don't even know what it means. You say, who's in charge of sales? And you look at me, I have no idea. Well, your waiters are in charge of sales if you're a restaurant. So what are your profit drivers? What drives your profit? That's number 3. And then 4 is what's your implementation approach? So those are the 4 components of any really good plan. So let's, as fast as humanly possible, I'm going to try and take you through all 4 of those. So, Madison Avenue, everybody's heard the term USP, unique selling proposition. The problem with unique selling proposition is it's really based upon your internal focus, your internal strength. So I don't like that term at all, unique selling proposition, because it's usually based on something about you and not about something that's going on in the market. So we've been teaching what we call the ultimate strategic position, which is based more on a strategy on what's happening in the marketplace and in your particular field. And of course, I'm in my hospital room. The hospital phone is ringing. I just hung up on whoever that was. But let me give you a great example. if you look at Domino's Pizza, it's a simple example, but it's a really good one. They changed the buying criteria and built a $9 billion company on the back of one thing, and had nothing to do with pizza. It had to do with only delivery, and in the beginning, speed of delivery. So, when it's not 30 minutes or it's free, you remember the saying. And so that's an example of like a strategic position that is based upon the market, what's happening in the market, how the market is demanding. And, we're in a very dynamic time right now. I mean, if you're the best CD manufacturer in the world, 10 years ago, you were doing great. And I remember Britney Spears sold 10 million albums one year, and that's like impossible now. You can't do it. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to buy CDs. Everybody buys individual songs. Now everyone's buying on MP3s. I think the biggest seller last year was 4 million copies or something. So nobody's going to hit those kind of numbers anymore, and that's changing. And, of course, if you're, Kindle now, what's going on with that? That's reshaping the whole marketplace. And then Apple came, because I just had a discussion with my book publisher about this, and he was saying that Apple, came in and they changed the landscape too, because they're giving a more generous commission than Amazon. So now Amazon, who really has a monopoly or had a monopoly until the iPad came along, so there's a whole business that's changing. So my question to you is, here's a great exercise. What's the current buying criteria for your product or service? I like to take like 60 seconds and write down. And first, before you do that, let me ask you this question. How sophisticated is your buyer about your product or service? Now, when I do this live, I'll say, if your buyer is very sophisticated, raise your hand. Almost nobody will raise their hand, but somebody will raise their hand. And I'll say, okay, what's your buyer? And they say, my buyer is an architect. And I say, so your architect is very sophisticated about what you sell? Oh, no. They're sophisticated about what they do. They're not sophisticated about what I sell. So most people, when they come to most situations, are very unsophisticated. They don't have I just bought a new condo, and so we outfitted that thing with everything from the carpet to the windows to blah, blah. I go into a carpet store. First place I go into, the guy says, oh, this is all green. It's what everybody's going with. It's made from corn. You got to buy it, blah, blah, blah. I say, fine. He tells me how much. Just for the hell of it, I'm with somebody. She says to me, let's just go check in another store. So we go to Lowe's, which is like a big, big box store, and this guy was like a neighborhood carpet guy recommended by 2 or 3 people in the neighborhood. I go to Lowe's. They have the same exact brand, same name, same everything, 1/3 the price. So schmuck that I am, I was just about to spend, 3 times more money with this other guy had it not been for the girl that was with me. Well, just for the fun of it, let's go check Lowe's. I didn't say anything to that guy, but there's a part of me want to call him up and say, dude, I just want you to know the 3 people that recommended me to your store, I went back to all 3 of them and told them that you're 3 times more than Lowe's. So you can't go around ripping people off and survive today. But the point is, I don't have a sophisticated, insight on carpet, and I wouldn't know the difference. And because I'm usually don't have enough time and I'm in a big hurry, I'm that idiot who probably would have paid 3 times more money. So let me ask you to take 60 seconds and write down, what's the criteria for your product or service? What is the criteria for your type of product or service that you think a person is considering? Don't write down what it should be. That's exercise 2. I want you to write down what you think it is now, and you'll note it's very sloppy, it's very loose. So 60 seconds, write down what is the current criteria when someone is looking at your type of product or service.
When he says criteria, so you understand clearly, what he's just saying is, what are their considerations? What is it they're looking for? How do they evaluate whether you're worthwhile or not? You got to think of it this way. Right. Nobody buys from you because they love your business. They buy from you because you're giving them some significant advantage. What advantage is it that they're looking from to get out of your product? What is it that they're going to get from you? And what is it they're looking for? That's key.
And then part 2 would be, what should it be? Now, take a look at that criteria, and what's not there that should be? And Tony, tell me if I'm not loud enough or whatever, because I keep forgetting I'm wearing a headset. So if it's not loud enough, just let me know. But, what should it be? What criteria can you add to the criteria you just wrote down that would make, see, this is what we get people to do, and I'm going to give you some really great examples of what we get people to start thinking through how you set the buying criteria in your favor. how Domino's Pizza changed the buying criteria off of pizza. Like, the product became secondary to speed of delivery. I have a boat in Marina del Rey, and a couple of weeks ago we were on the boat, and man, I can get pizza delivered right to the boat. Guy comes in a little motorboat, pulls up to the back of my boat, and gives me pizza. It's really cool. So, what could your buying criteria consist of? Because a shift in strategy can make all of your tactics work 10 times harder. And I've done it again and again and again, like Tony said. The last call we were on, we plucked people out of the audience and showed them how to get 10 times more leads just from the same moves they were already making. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. You mentioned Homex. That's a great example. This guy sells houses in Mexico, and so he's got a radio ad that says, buy a Homex home, buy a New York Stock Exchange. So it's a publicly traded company, not a lot of secrets there, so I can tell you their numbers. They 25% margin, very, very good margin. And, but they are having trouble getting people to buy those homes. And so I'm very research-oriented, and this is one of the ways that you can reset the buying criteria. Take a look at the marketplace that you serve. And so we, commissioned some studies, and we found out that one of the biggest hesitations in Mexico is actually a psychological hesitation, in that families in Mexico will live 3 and 4 generations in the same 700 square foot adobe, tiny little building. And we're talking like the grandparents who are in their 70s, and then they have the kids in their 40s, and then the kids in their 40s have the kids in their 20s, and the kids in their 20s now have kids. And you've got 4 generations, no kidding, like 12 people living in this 700 square foot, people sleeping on the floor and all over the place. And what we found is that anyone raised in that environment becomes, forgive me, Tony has mentioned that I was on my way to Fiji to speak with him tomorrow at Business Mastery, and I came in here and they found out that GHBD is attacking my body and my liver is under attack. So they put me on all these drugs to try and slow down the what's called graft versus host disease. And it's all fine. They will slow it down. It is slowing down. I'm fine, but I'm on drugs. So I'm a little, what was that word again? Anyway.
I do that without drugs, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. So anyway, we found that we studied that. It's called being raised, where you're literally not able to make decisions. Because think about yourself, and in an environment where in my household there were 2 parents and 2 children, and the children were given the place to grow and to blossom and to become fine young adults and to have good minds, and they were heard, and we had conversations at the dinner table, and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like, and Tony, you can back me up here if you want to, I feel like I did a good job. I did a good job at raising good kids. And, but let's throw now in my parents still trying to tell me what to do, then trying to tell my kids what to do, then maybe my kids, because they don't have the kind of quality time. By the way, it shows if you don't have quality time with your children, they're twice as likely to do drugs, alcohol, get pregnant as teenagers. Now my kids have kids. So just picture that lovely environment where there's 4 people in a nice environment where I'm raising fine, structured, well, decision-making adults, and now suddenly they're in this environment where they're on the lowest pecking order and everybody's telling them what to do. It's called learned helplessness, that literally children raised in a crowded household will not be able to make decisions. And children raised in crowded households are 400% more likely to have the child die in infancy. Like I think it's from 1 to 3 years old. They're 400% more likely to die when they're raised in a crowded household. So we took some of this market data and we put it into their radio spots. And the radio spots were pulling in October, before we ran this a couple years ago. We ran it. In September, they ran their radio spots, and they spent, let's just say, $200,000 nationally in Mexico, and they got 7 phone calls. And their advertising agency said, well, radio is not really, we're not going to drive leads of people. It's just doing branding here. By the way, anybody who tells you that, I don't believe that. I mean,
run.
Yeah. If you're Wells Fargo, okay, you might, do some branding. But me, if Wells Fargo is my client and they're listening, which big companies don't listen that good, just to tell you, But if they're listening, every single thing I do is going to drive leads. It's one of the reasons why Tony and I are together, is because I got his attention as, by driving much more leads from his radio spots. But I've told the story before. But anyway, so we put that data in there, and the following month, they had so many phone calls, their call center was overwhelmed, and we don't even know how many they actually had, but it was 16,000% increase in incoming calls that we could track, and then maybe another 1,800 that we couldn't even track because they didn't have voicemail even set up for all those people. So we've done this again and again and again. So my question to you is, if you look at your market and what's going on in your market, what kinds of things, and again, I'm going to show you how we can go deeper in this, and I'll give you some very practical examples. Like we work with an exercise equipment company, and when they advertise, they would say, come and, right now we're having a special on, treadmills and 30% off of treadmills. Well, if you're very familiar with my stuff, I do this whole exercise where we show you that, there's only a tiny percentage of people buying now, and your ads, I can't believe how many people I run into to do this. Their ads totally focus on the guy that's buying now. And the guy that's buying now, who is out buying a home right now, there were 7 people calling that HomeX number, so they were figuring that HomeX ad was just really designed to try and generate good brand awareness. But what I did is I scared the bejesus out of, whatever that was, thousands of people all across the country who never thought about buying a home, and I got them to pick up the phone. So my question to you is there a way for you as a strategist to try and appeal to a larger segment of your audience, to try and capture more than just those buying now? Because most of you, I would guarantee it, if I got to go up one side of your marketing and down the other, it's all tactical. There's no strategy being utilized. You're not even thinking about strategy, and it's because, like Tony said, you're an operator, you're not an entrepreneur. You think you're an entrepreneur, although there might be some serial entrepreneurs on this call who you're an entrepreneur. But, most of you are just an operator. You want to say something, Tony?
Yeah, I just want to mention, I said, when Chet's telling you all those numbers, some people will hear those things and go, okay, that's really great in Mexico. What Chet was very humble about was that change from just saying, come buy a home from us, where your criteria is really going to be met by somebody who's looking for a home, the 7 people. 3% of the people, no matter what you're doing, are looking for what you're advertising right now. If that's all you appeal to, you're going to get a very small number of people. There's another 7% of people that are kind of, they're kind of open to it. There's people that are not looking but are open to it. That's another 30%. So to get that larger group, what Chet did here by doing this work with these guys, changing what their offering was, changing their criteria, getting people who were not interested in a home to be thinking about a home, it's increased sales for HomeX more than $700 million. Now, it wasn't just the radio ads. It was the radio ads with the rest of the plan. But that's what HomeX has come back and told us we've delivered for them by this implemented plan. So you got to understand, this may sound boring to you. It's like, okay, well, what's the current buying criteria? What are people looking for? And what could they be looking? What should they be looking for? Think the simplicity of Domino's Pizza. Go back to that again. Here's a guy that they're not even selling how good their pizza is. They're just selling they're going to get it to you or it's free. And they literally built $1 billion business by changing what the offer was, what they're offering people, what they're getting people to consider. What do people consider today? You and I both know convenience, speed are huge things in almost any business. Price is something sometimes. Quality is another. What are the elements that could set you apart? What could it be? What could you offer? What would play to your strengths? This is what we're talking about. And taking a little time to think this through, while it's not very exciting because people don't like to think. Most business operators, they don't think. That's why they're in the position they are. They go, 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 go. They keep executing their basic fundamental tactics of here's how we make sales, and they can never really grow double or triple because they never think. This is what we're asking you to take a moment to do for yourself.
Yeah, and let's go B2B, for example. Work with a company that is an architectural firm for hotels. So what they do is, in fact, if you go to Condé Nast top 100 hotels, I think they built 46 of them, and the next closest competitor only built 8. So they're very famous in that field. But, if I call up Hilton and I say, hi, we'd love to come and talk to you about, our architecture, and Hilton is currently not buying a condo not building a hotel right now, then they don't want to have a conversation with you. So think this one through. Like Tony says, think, this is what I'm saying, a strategist will slaughter a tactician. If I could just get you to be, and I'm going to move on soon, but if I could just get you to be a bit of a strategist before, part of your plan is, what's my strategy? What is the ultimate position I want in the marketplace? How do I want to be perceived by my buyer? How many different ways do I want to have respect from that person? So we took this company, and they basically, number one architectural firm in the world. They have offices all over the world. And instead of calling up Hilton and saying, hi, we want to come and talk to you about, building, your architecture needs right now, and they say, well, we don't have any right now. Well, you might be in the middle of building 5 hotels right now. They've got 2 they're thinking of building, but they're not at the point where they're going to talk about the architecture yet. And when they do, you might not be in there. You might not be in that buying now crowd. So because this company was so well respected, it was very easy for them to call up somebody and say, yeah, hi, Hilton. We're the name of the firm is WATG, and we, are you familiar with us? Well, every hotel company in the world is. Yeah, you're familiar with you. Well, we recently did a study, and we found out there's 6 things that are making hotels succeed now, and there's 5 things that are making hotels fail. And so we're going to be showing this to, and then name a bunch of other competitors, Marriott, Ritz-Carlton, blah, blah, blah. And we just wondered if you might want to see the same information. Now, that's an impossible appointment to turn down, but I'm just trying to show you that a strategist will think through not just tactically, yeah, I want to sell architecture, yeah, I want to sell pizza, but what else can I do to try and leapfrog myself ahead of the competition? And with that strategy, they went from like maybe getting, make 100 phone calls and get 1 or 2 people to meet with them to get 80 people out of 100 to meet with them. It was like literally no one would turn that meeting down. Now, once you get in there, that education had to be good, which it was in their case. They're really top, like I said, the number 1 architectural firm. So it was full of great information. And when by the time they were done, you didn't want your hotel built by anybody else in the world but these guys, because they did such a great job at teaching you about things that other people don't think about, what was happening in their marketplace. A lot of other architectural firms hungry for business would come and say, well, I'll do your hotel for less. So companies were going and getting outside firms who really didn't know hotels, and there's a lot of science to that. Like if you're in a huge hotel like the Wynn, who's a friend of Tony's, the Wynn Hotels, you have to build that hotel in a way that food can be up to the room in 10 minutes and still be hot. There's a lot of architecture that goes into just making that function well, and where the back entrances are, forget how it looks in the lobby and all that. So by the time these guys were done, you just wouldn't want your hotel built by anybody else. So it was just a super addition to their strategy. They're still using it. It's still highly effective. And so let me move on, but I want to tell you, strategy and your strategic position need to be first. You need to think that through. Most of you haven't thought it through. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a market domination strategy. You don't have, if you look at your tactics, my book, Chapter 4, which I give for free to anybody who wants it, it outlines 14 strategic objectives you can achieve with each tactic, or up to 14, because not all of them. But most of you aren't achieving more than 1 or 2. And so when you look at 14 different strategic objectives that you can achieve, it changes how you operate at the tactical level. Okay, so let's go.
Let me just plant a seed, if I may, with everybody. What you have to do is you've got to grab people's attention also. Your tactics have to grab their attention. Information is flowing across us. We're in oceans of information, and people are starving for wisdom. So what you got to think about is, we had a company that was a group of preschools, and they were just having such a tough time trying to fill up their schools. And we said, how are you doing it? And the criteria they're having is, well, we have the best teachers. Well, everyone says we have great teachers. But instead what they put together was a communication, and all their advertising that said that the 9 biggest mistakes that parents make in picking a preschool. They talked about, you've got to know what these are so you don't make these mistakes to your children. It affects their entire future. Now, how many people are going to stop and want to read what that is?
That down, right?
Yeah, versus somebody. And so that's a different one. He's talking about criteria. He's really saying, what is it that you're going to put out there that's going to jolt people to pay attention to you and get you to see there are things they have to consider? Now, by the way, those 9 things that they're talking about that people make a mistake about, their school, they designed their school where it meets all criteria the opposite of those mistakes. So by the time you're done, how can you possibly go anywhere else? We're talking about starting out with the end in mind, starting out figuring out how to shock people, grab people, get their attention, disturb people in a world where information's coming at them, and then fulfill by your product or service what will meet their need. And you can do it whether you got a preschool or whether, you're a chiropractor or whether you're somebody that sells real estate. There's 40 million McMansions right now that nobody wants in this country, and it's because people in the building industry didn't stop and say, what's the environment like today? Today, X and Y generation people, they don't want to have these long car drives. They don't want it. They don't want to live in exurbia. They want to be right around the corner from where they work, or some of them even want a carless existence, and they want a smaller home. So you can compete with some of the big boys if you can just stop and say, what business am I in? What business do I need to be in? How are people buying the product now? What were people really going to want today? What could I do better than anybody else? And then how do I get that message out there in a real simple way that grabs their attention?
And we could teach a whole seminar on that one.
Well, we do.
Yeah, we do.
If we were coaching you this one-on-one, obviously we'd walk you through this, but we're trying to make this valuable for you right now, so we hope that you're taking notes and really pushing yourself a little bit to think about this, and you can get together with your team afterwards and brainstorm further and say, how do we become a Domino's Pizza? I'll give you one more frame. You can change your entire company by changing the offer, just by changing the offer. If you make an offer that's irresistible enough, you're going to change the entire responsiveness that people have to your business. And their businesses have done it, and Domino's is just one of those simple examples. Let's continue.
Okay, so number 2 area is skill development. And every company needs a commitment to developing skills because it's what makes the difference. When I look at, one guy starts a business. Well, let's take home as a great example. One guy starts a construction company, and he's got big plans. He's going to have a big company someday. We go back 20 years later, and there's the guy on the roof hammering the nail. He never, basically he's making a living. In the same 20-year period, HomeX is building 1,700 homes a week. They're building 20,000 developments with 20,000 homes in them. And, these are just 2 brothers who were in the construction business who, just kept getting more and more skills. In fact, the way they found us is he heard the radio spots that we have on the radio, and the CEO of the company, is a billionaire, calls up, and he's, of course, a Mexican accent, and he says, I want to talk to Chet Holmes. And so the call center said, well, nobody gets to talk to Chet Holmes. He said, I don't care how much it costs. 5 seconds later, yeah, hi, Mr. Chet Holmes. Just kidding. No, but seriously, that's what happened. He said, I don't care how much it costs. I want to talk to Chet Holmes. So he had heard the radio spots. He bought the book, and of course, we made him $700 million. So I guess he did the right thing. But there needs to be a commitment to skill development at the CEO or owner level, and then at every level throughout the company. So I'm just going to go. I can't do everything that needs to be going here. But let's just say, even if you're 100% online business, what I'm going to give you are areas that you should be developing even in the written thing. But if you're live, it's even more appropriate. But I'm going to give you just some basic skill areas. Number 1 is building rapport and establishing credibility. That's number 1. So building rapport and establishing credibility. If you don't have an effort on a weekly basis to grow that skill, remember, number 4 is implementation. So I'm going to give you a formula on how to get all this stuff working in your business. That's flat. But number 1, you've got to have skills toward, it was amazing because my rapport skills, Tony mentioned I was top producer every place I ever worked. And, Tony has the best rapport skills of anybody in the world today. And, but most of us aren't that lucky. Most of us don't, come into life with those kind of skills. And I can tell you, as a guy who's run, massive sales organizations of, 20,000 salespeople down to, 5 and 6 salespeople, that, you get 1 or 2 guys in there who might have really natural rapport and skills. The rest of them, it's a taught skill. They don't think to ask any questions. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people don't ask you a question. It's just amazing. I'm in the hospital right now, and I had been here off and on for the last year, and I hadn't been here. Nobody thought I would be back, So, but the nurses come in, and I know their whole life story, and they know very, very little about me. And so that's a natural type, part of my personality. How's the kids? How's it going? How's this? Oh, how's your music? How's it? and they just start telling me all about their lives, and their faces light up. So what are you doing to build that skill in your organization? Number two, finding the need for the buyer. Finding that where are the needs, and what are their current buying criteria? How what's your skill in that area? If I take, let's say you have 6 salespeople, and I take those 6 salespeople and I bring them in a room and I say, tell me every question you ask every buyer. And then I take you, the owner of the company, and I take you in a room and say, tell me every question you ask every buyer. The difference between what you tell me and what those salespeople tell me is so widespread. And again, the reason we know this is because this is one of our services. Tony and I have a consulting practice, and we audit companies. And we go in there and we audit you. We audit you up one side and down the other, and it's remarkable, shocking how if you have 6 salespeople out here, 6 totally different sales stories, half of them don't ask the questions that they should be asking, and that's something you work on, guys. It's part of your growth plan. Your growth plan is like, okay, building credibility, it's one of the areas of growth. Now, take a look at this, because this leads us into number 2, and I'm going to try and mix these number 2 and number 3 up, but we call them profit drivers. It's like, what are the areas of your business where you're looking to grow your profit? And it's amazing because anytime you grow performance, you grow profit. Meaning that if you're getting right now 50, let's go with an easier number, 100 call-ins right now a week. We get 3,000. But let's say you get 100 inbound phone calls a week at your company. Well, if I can get you to build their rapport skills even better, if I can get your salespeople to have greater credibility faster and earlier in the sales process. And by the way, I could give you right now, I could teach a whole seminar on that, right? So could Tony. But my question to you is, if you just wrote it down on the whiteboard and you sat with your team and started thinking through, what could we do to establish high credibility faster? Are you guys going to get some ideas? You are going to get some ideas. Are you going to enjoy the process?
Chet, would you give an example, like, for example, with the company that sold sofas? I think it's a great example. Just it clarifies this about how you establish the credibility up front and how you're really simultaneously building value before they even buy.
Well, again, I didn't want to kind of try to go into that whole big seminar thing, but any time you're knowledgeable about things beyond the product and service, you get very fast credibility. And I could give you lots of examples, but if we go back to the Homex guys, man, they couldn't tell you how many homes are being sold in Mexico. They couldn't tell you, and I'm only staying with them just to be, so I don't have to keep giving new examples. But
right.
The thing is like they couldn't tell you, they didn't know any of the data about why people don't buy, and that your children who are raised in a crowded household will have learned helplessness, so they literally cannot make decisions. You start showing that to people, man. I mean, it's like the parents want them out of the house, the kids want to be out of the house, the kids don't want to raise their kids in a crowded household. I mean, we've literally motivated the entire country of Mexico. When we started working with Homex, they were building 700 homes a week. When we were finished 2 years later, they were building 1,700 homes a week. So, it's more than double their sales. And by the way, in the worst economy Mexico's had in 20 years. So what we did is we constantly trained their salespeople with market data. And I'm just giving you the highlights, but we had a 66-panel presentation on, facts and data about Mexico and about, the psychological impact of owning a home and how much better it was for you. And then in Mexico, you can finance your home through the government at rates they haven't had in 20 years. So you could literally take, if you have Social Security piled up, you could take that Social Security and use it as down payment in a house, and the Mexican government will give you that money. And then we showed people how they would end up with way more wealth by using their money to buy a house than if they left it in Social Security, where they're just going to get that money at the end of the day. So moving along, number 3 is building value. So that's where you give the education. So there needs to be a point in your process where you build value and you establish, your credibility. And that, again, that's market data is going to be way more powerful than product data. Product data was, we build a home. They cost $20,000 up to whatever, $65,000. And in Mexico, for these guys to build you a brand new home from start to finish, they pour the whole thing in concrete into plastic molds, and bam, you buy a house on Monday, and the following Monday they have a brand new house built just for you, just the way you wanted to, using molds and concrete, in Mexico. But the point is that The market data is what changed their life. So I would say to every one of you, there's market data that's going to really make a difference. And then number 4, create desire. How do you make me want it? And have you sat down with your staff or yourself if you're a solopreneur and said, what can we do to really make people want what it is that we have? Is there anything we can do to create more desire? These are just things that you can do to work on your business. And again, I'll show you how we can help you with all this stuff, but there's ways to go deeper on this stuff, and it's profoundly impact. Number 5, what are the most frequent reasons for not buying? This I find companies do have a pretty good grasp on, but what they don't have a good grasp on is how to overcome that. So we'll run into companies who've done a really good job at, figuring out what the most frequent reasons for people not buying. But if you don't have that down, if you're not working on that, you're dreaming. I can't tell you how many companies I go into where they're just not tracking any of this, and they're not measuring any of this, and they're not asking anybody. And as Tony said, as top producer, nobody ever asked me why, ever. And my personality was so willing to share, I'm that kind of a guy that I would have taken thrill and delight to show every other salesperson in that store, whatever it was, when a furniture store I worked in, or when I was in selling advertising or swimming pools or vacuum cleaners. I was showing anybody who would listen why I was outselling all of them, but nobody even asked me.
So, by the way, I want to jump in on one thing, if I may. Some of you who have businesses that are totally online might be saying, well, how do I'm online. How am I going to establish rapport? How am I going to find the needs and qualify the buyer? How am I going to build value? How am I going to create desire? Why aren't they buying? These are all things that even when you don't have a sales staff, which we personally believe if you don't have a sales team, you should be building one. It's one of the places you can easily grab and grow a business, and you can do it literally with no risk because you can tie the sales process to what they really earn. But I'll tell you, you can do the same thing with the most simple A/B testing. If you look at the Obama campaign in 2008, it broke every record for fundraising, and it was using the online environment. And one of the reasons is they hired away the guy that was at Google. He got inspired by Obama and said, I'm going to go run this for him. But Google does everything on A/B testing. You never see the same thing on Google ever from 2 different people because they're A/B testing constantly. They don't even know the why. They just see what works. And I'll give you a simple example. When they took Obama out, and they originally thought, conventional wisdom would be, if you're going to raise money, his website should have a video of Obama speaking because he's an inspiring speaker. So let's put this video on there. Now, fortunately, the guy from Google came along and said, you know what? We don't know what is making people buy or not buy. We don't know what's making people be excited about this or not excited about this product or service. You're all judging this based on what he called HIPPO, the highest paid opinion in the room. He said, I don't want HIPPO. I want real data. So what he did was he said, let's start testing. And he took things like the Obama video, and they traded out a couple videos and didn't get much change. So then he traded out and put in an image of Obama, the one that became very famous, the aqua-colored, pop culture image they made of Obama. And when they made that change alone, instantaneously they saw a 13% increase in fundraising. Then he took that out and he put a black and white image of Obama with his family and A/B tested that. And it was 40% more effective in raising money than Obama giving a speech. It was unbelievable. Then he went around and he took things like, okay, they had, sign up now, and they changed that to learn more, and they instantaneously got 18.6% of the people to give them more money. So they raised $75 million more just by changing a couple of the criteria that they didn't even understand